Hi! I am working on putting yokes on my bloomers, and this is kind of part of the Frozen project. I was looking at my undergarments, and I have a corset cover made, and I have petticoats, and I've done videos on petticoats, so I'm not going to do another video on petticoats. But all of the bloomers that I made, crotchless bloomers that I made about 4 or 5 years ago, I put them on a waistband and I used snaps to close them. And worked fine for a little while. But the snaps are plastic and the fabric around the plastic was wearing away. And so then I put drawstrings on them so that I could just tie them in the front. But I don't like the bulk around my waist. I came up with a solution, and I came up with a solution about a year ago. And I've been slowly transitioning my bloomers over to yoked bloomers. What that means is I'm taking the lower part of the bloomer, that is perfectly fine, and I'm attaching it to a yoke, okay? In doing so, I'm putting buttons on the front, and that's keeping the bulk down. It also lowers the gather of the bloomers down lower on my hip, so that, again, I don't have so much bulk at the waist. Now, in doing this, I had done 2 pair of bloomers, and they've primarily been the only 2 pair of bloomers I've worn for about a year now. This pair that I just was showing you, I tore. And I have a tendency to need to patch my bloomers all the time because I'm always tearing them. And I tore it right across the seat on the back side. And so I had to patch it. And it was funny because the other day I was getting dressed and I was looking for my second pair of bloomers and I couldn't find them, and I was frustrated and I was losing my mind. I couldn't figure out what I'd done with them. So I ended up wearing a pair of sweatpants underneath my outfit. I will never do that again. Wow, that was very uncomfortable. After getting used to wearing crotchless bloomers all the time with my skirts and my dresses, wearing a pair of sweatpants was hot. It was uncomfortable. The waist of the sweatpants, where it sat in relation to the waist and everything else, it rubbed, and I actually have like a rub spot around my waist now. Very uncomfortable. So today, coming into the art room, I just got done with a commission project, so I'm really looking at other things to do, and I have 3 pairs of bloomers. 1 pair was already in my sewing box. I knew it was there, I just couldn't find it. The other pair was at the bottom of a bin of petticoats. And then the 3rd pair, I think, was also here in the sewing room, and they just hadn't been taken apart. 1 pair had been taken apart and the other pair hadn't. And what I did to take them apart, which is really simple, I cut the waistband off. That's all I did. Because I know that adding a yoke is gonna lower my inseam. So it's gonna lower the amount of fabric compared to where it would be at the waist. So if it were at my waist with the waistband, this is the perfect length. But I'm adding a yoke, which means I'm adding about that much fabric to the height of the seat. And so what I need to do is I need to take these down by another 1.5 inches because I'm adding a chunk of fabric at the yoke. And that will make it sit exactly where it needs to without hanging too far down my leg. I don't really have a thigh chafing problem, but I will tell you that I can tell the difference between sweatpants and crotchless bloomers. I had more chafing from the sweatpants than I have ever had from the crotchless bloomers. The yoke that I started with is the petticoat yoke. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you. I've taken this petticoat piece. I don't need it to be the full 7.5 inches. I actually only want it to be about 5. That's pretty much the length of what I need this petticoat piece to be. So I'm just gonna take my little pencil here and I'm gonna mark around at 5. And then I'm gonna connect the dots. Okay, pretty simple. And that gets me my height for my petticoat pieces. And I can fold that up all the way around. And what's really nice about this paper is that it's quite malleable. It lets you achieve the look you're looking for. And it holds its shape pretty good. And then I'm going to iron that. Okay, so there I've got my waistband yoke. Okay, so now that I have my pieces, what I've done is I have sewn them down the center and connected them. So I end up with a casing that I'm going to put the waist of my bloomers into this yoke. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to sew up the end all the way around and down the other end. I'm gonna basically make an encasing for it. So I'm gonna do that first. So once it's sewn together and ironed, this is what you end up with. You end up with this beautiful yoke. And it's all together, and all you have to do is gather in your crotchless bloomers. I have a pair here. And now, the way I do this might not be the way someone else does this. But I know that my center back is actually where this piece, I have to do this, I have to think about this. Okay, so this is the center back crotch seam. Okay, this is a leg, and I know that this is going to be the front, right? So I have the center back and the front pinned, and then I'm gonna pick the other leg, and I like to overlap them right here at the center back. So where that seam is, see that seam? I'm going to take about an inch into the next piece. I'm going to pin it. And then I'm going to take the other leg and I'm going to overlap that same 1/4 inch seam. so that one leg overlaps the other in the back. The center back is overlapped with one leg, and then the other leg is also pinned over here. Now, I know that I have a little bit more booty than I have stomach. So when I eyeball the side piece, so my bloomers are ironed so I can see what the side is. I do recommend doing that for the yoke too. I haven't, so I'm just gonna pinch it with my finger. I'm gonna find the side. I'm actually gonna go over about 1/2 inch. Okay, maybe 1 inch. So I'm not lining the side creases up. I'm pushing a little bit of fabric more to the back so that I have room to sit and I have a little bit more ease in the booty part, because I have a bigger booty than I do have than a tummy. So, and I gently like lay this in. You can see that I'm not really gathering it because I know that this yoke fits me just right. And I don't really need to gather the waist down. I mean, I made my bloomers originally with the idea that I wouldn't have but a tuck here and a tuck there in the waistband. And these work out just great where it pretty much lays flat in the front because I want the flat to have less bulk. And that pushes the more of the fabric into the back where I want it anyway because I sit there. So I'm going to pinch that. Which side am I pinching? This side. Okay. So I pinch. So I know that this is the center of my yoke and this is the center of my bloomers, and I go over about 1 inch to the back. So I'm moving that seam to the back, or I'm moving more fabric to the back side. And so I pin a little bit here, and then I take the other and I gather it a little here. Not a lot, just a little bit. I'm just fitting in the fabric so that when I sew it, it'll gather down. And then the front is pretty much where it needs to be. The one thing you want to make sure of is that you don't have any puckering in the yoke. You want any gather to be on the pant leg pieces, not on your yoke. So I'm going to go sew that together. Okay, so I have now put together the yoke and I've attached the legs to it. I have too much stuff on my table right now. So this is what it looks like. So this is the yoke, and it's attached to the pant legs. And now I'm just going to figure out where I want to put the buttons. I'm going to sew the other yokes on the other two pair of bloomers, and then I'm going to do all the buttons at one time. But the way I've been doing it is I've been doing one set of buttonholes and then giving myself an option of different kinds of buttons to use in different places on the other side. So that is my yoked pair of bloomers. I'm so excited. Yay!